Dramily.com, unlimited drama series.
The wrench slipped from my greasy fingers and clattered onto the concrete floor of my garage. It was past midnight, and I was elbow deep in the engine of my beat-up Chevy when I heard my wife Jenna's voice drifting through the thin walls from our kitchen. He's so clueless. He'd wear a shirt that says loser and think it's a compliment. Her laugh was sharp, cutting through the humid summer air like a blade. I froze, my hand still gripping the oil-stained distributor cap, and listened to her continue her phone conversation. No, Nina, I'm serious. Martin has no idea what's coming. After my promotion goes through, I won't need to pretend anymore. My name is Martin Graves, but everyone calls me Marty. I'm 50 years old, and until 6 months ago, I owned a small IT repair shop in our mid-sized Indiana town. The business went under when the big box stores started offering cheaper services, and now I spend my days fixing neighbors' cars in my garage for cash under the table. Yeah, but it'd be the only thing I've worn that fits anymore, I thought bitterly, wiping my hands on an already filthy rag. Jenna was 47, ambitious, and had just landed a senior position at Hartwell and Associates, the biggest advertising agency in our city. She'd been working late nights for months, claiming she was preparing for her new role. Now I was starting to understand what those late nights really involved. I crept closer to the door connecting the garage to our house, careful not to make any noise. The conversation was getting more interesting. Ethan says we should wait until after the company party next week. Make it look natural, you know? Like, I just realized I deserve better. Ethan Beck. I knew that name. He was some hotshot junior executive at Jenna's agency, maybe 10 years younger than me, with perfect teeth and a gym membership he actually used. I'd met him at a few company functions, where he'd looked at me like I was something stuck to the bottom of his designer shoes. The best part is, Martin's parents absolutely adore me. They'll probably blame him for the divorce. She was right about that. My parents, retired and living in the same suburb, had always thought Jenna was too good for me. They'd probably throw her a celebration party when she finally dumped their disappointment of a son. I heard her footsteps moving toward the stairs, and I quickly retreated to my workbench, grabbing the wrench and pretending to be absorbed in my repairs. But my mind was racing. A company party next week, a plan involving Ethan Beck, and apparently, my wife thought I was too stupid to see it coming. Well, honey, I thought, maybe it's time to prove you wrong. The next morning, Jenna was all smiles and coffee kisses, acting like the perfect suburban wife. She was dressed in one of her new power suits, the kind that cost more than I used to make in a week at the repair shop. Don't forget about the promotion party Saturday night, she said, adjusting her makeup in the hallway mirror. It's going to be a big deal. The whole company will be there. Wouldn't miss it, I replied, forcing a smile. I'm so proud of you, babe. She gave me a quick peck on the cheek, and I caught a whiff of expensive perfume. New perfume. The kind you don't buy for your husband. After she left for work, I sat in our kitchen, drinking instant coffee and looking around at the life we'd built together. 23 years of marriage, and it was all about to come crashing down. Our daughter Sophie was away at college, probably posting TikTok videos about her dysfunctional family. The house felt empty, like a stage set waiting for the actors to return and finish the play. I spent the day doing odd jobs around the neighborhood, but my mind kept drifting back to that phone conversation. By evening, I'd made a decision. I was going to that party, and I was going to pay attention. Saturday night arrived with the kind of oppressive humidity that makes your clothes stick to your skin. The party was being held at the Riverside Country Club, the fanciest venue in town. I put on my best suit, which was about 5 years old, and showed it and tried to look like I belonged. The club was packed with Jenna's coworkers, all of them young, successful, and speaking a language of marketing buzzwords that might as well have been ancient Greek. I grabbed a beer from the bar and found a corner where I could observe without being noticed. Jenna was in her element, working the room like a politician. She'd laugh at someone's joke, touch their arm, and move on to the next conversation. She was magnetic, I had to admit. It was one of the things that had attracted me to her in the first place, back when we were both young and stupid and thought love was enough. Then I saw Ethan Beck. He was everything I wasn't. Tall, confident, with the kind of casual arrogance that comes from never having failed at anything important. He wore his expensive suit like it was casual wear, and when he smiled, it was like watching a toothpaste commercial come to life. I watched him work his way through the crowd toward Jenna, and when they met, the chemistry was obvious. Not obvious enough that anyone else would notice, but I was looking for it. The way their hands brushed when they reached for drinks, the way she laughed just a little too hard at his jokes, the way they stood just a little too close when they talked. "Martin, there you are." I turned to find my parents approaching, my mother beaming with pride, and my father looking uncomfortable in his rented tuxedo. "Isn't this wonderful?" Mom gushed. "Our Jenna, getting such an important promotion. You must be so proud." "Absolutely," I said, raising my beer in a mock toast. "She's really something special." Dad clapped me on the shoulder with the kind of forced enthusiasm that said he was trying to be supportive, but wasn't sure what to say. "You've got yourself a real winner there, son. Better hold on to her." If only you knew, Dad. The evening dragged on with speeches and toasts and the kind of corporate cheerleading that makes you want to set yourself on fire. Finally, the company president called for attention and announced Jenna's promotion to Senior Vice President of Creative Development. The crowd applauded, and Jenna stepped up to the microphone with a gracious smile. "Thank you all so much," she began, her voice carrying perfectly across the room. "This promotion means the world to me, and I couldn't have done it without the support of my amazing team." She went on to thank various colleagues, including Ethan, who she praised for his innovative thinking and collaborative spirit. Then, to my surprise, she mentioned me. And of course, I have to thank my wonderful husband, Martin, who has been so supportive during this transition. "Honey, could you come up here?" Every eye in the room turned to me. I felt my face flush as I made my way through the crowd to the small stage where Jenna was waiting. She put her arm around my waist and pulled me close to the microphone. "Martin has been my rock through everything," she continued, and I could hear the practiced sincerity in her voice. "He's always been so understanding about my long hours and late nights. And to show my appreciation," she reached behind the podium and pulled out a gift box wrapped in silver paper. The crowd murmured with anticipation as she handed it to me. "Open it, honey." My hands were shaking as I tore off the wrapping paper. Inside was a black t-shirt, neatly folded. I held it up to read the white text printed across the front. "The loser of the house." The room erupted in laughter. People were pointing and taking pictures with their phones. I could hear someone say, "Oh my God, that's hilarious." And someone else respond, "She's got such a great sense of humor." I looked at Jenna, who was smiling like she'd just delivered the punchline to the world's funniest joke. In that moment, I understood that this wasn't just about her affair with Ethan Beck. This was about humiliating me in front of everyone who mattered in her professional world. This was about making sure that when she left me, everyone would understand why. I smiled back at her, and I could see the surprise in her eyes. She'd expected me to be embarrassed, maybe even angry. Instead, I leaned into the microphone and said, "Well, honey, at least now I know where I stand. Thanks for making it official." The crowd laughed even harder, thinking I was playing along with the joke. But inside, something had snapped. Something cold and calculating and absolutely furious. I folded the shirt carefully and tucked it under my arm. "I'll treasure this forever," I told her, and kissed her cheek. As we walked off the small stage together, she whispered in my ear, "You're such a good sport, Marty. I knew you'd understand." Oh, I understand perfectly, I thought. The question is, do you? The party ended around midnight, but I was wide awake when we got home. Jenna went straight upstairs to shower and change, chattering about how well the evening had gone and how excited she was about her new position. I nodded and made appropriate responses, but my mind was elsewhere. I waited until I heard the shower running, then quietly made my way to her purse, which she'd left on the kitchen counter. My hands were steady as I searched through it, looking for, I wasn't sure what. Evidence, maybe. Confirmation of what I already knew. What I found was better than I'd hoped for. Her phone was buried at the bottom of the purse, and when I picked it up, it lit up with a new text message. The preview was visible on the lock screen. Ethan, can't wait for tomorrow night. Same place? I quickly put the phone back and retreated to the living room, my heart pounding. Tomorrow was Sunday. Jenna had mentioned earlier in the week that she might need to work late on Sunday to prepare for her new role. Now I knew what kind of work she'd be doing. The next evening, Jenna kissed me goodbye and said she'd probably be at the office until at least 10 o'clock. Don't wait up, she said, grabbing her keys. This new position is going to require some serious dedication. I waited exactly 15 minutes after she left, then got in my truck and followed the route to her office downtown. But instead of turning into the business district, I kept driving toward the outskirts of town to a stretch of highway lined with chain restaurants and budget motels. I found her car in the parking lot of the Sunset Inn, a place that rented rooms by the hour and didn't ask questions. It was parked next to a silver BMW that I recognized as Ethan's. For a moment, I just sat in my truck, staring at the two cars and trying to process what I was feeling. It wasn't heartbreak exactly. It was more like the cold satisfaction of solving a puzzle. All the pieces were finally falling into place. I got out of my truck and walked over to Ethan's BMW. It was pristine, probably detailed every week. The kind of car that screamed success and self-importance. I pulled out my keys and dragged them along the driver's side, leaving a long, deep scratch in the metallic paint. It felt good. Really good. I walked around to the other side and repeated the process. Then I knelt down and used my pocket knife to put a small hole in the front tire. Not enough to cause a blowout, just enough to make it go flat slowly. Finally, I took out a piece of paper from my wallet and wrote a quick note. Congrats on your promotion, homewrecker. I tucked it under the windshield wiper and walked back to my truck. As I was pulling out of the parking lot, I noticed a security camera mounted on a pole near the motel office. Had it caught me vandalizing Ethan's car? I couldn't tell from this distance, but I made a mental note to be more careful in the future. I drove home and was sitting in my recliner watching late-night TV when Jenna finally came through the door at almost 11:30. How was work? I asked, not looking up from the television. Exhausting, she sighed, kicking off her heels. But productive. I think I'm really going to excel in this new role. I'm sure you will, I replied. You've always been good at collaborative projects. She gave me a strange look, but didn't say anything. She went upstairs to shower, and I noticed she took her phone with her this time. The next morning, I was in the garage when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Nice job, loser. Hope you run as fast as you fix cars. I stared at the message for a long time. Someone had seen me at the motel. Someone who knew about the t-shirt from the party. Someone who was enjoying this whole situation way too much. I deleted the message and tried to focus on the carburetor I was rebuilding, but my hands were shaking. This was escalating faster than I'd expected. Over the next few days, Jenna's behavior became even more suspicious. She started taking phone calls in the other room, claiming they were work-related. She bought new clothes and changed her hairstyle. She even joined a gym, something she'd never shown any interest in before. I need to look my best for this new position, she explained when I commented on her sudden fitness enthusiasm. Image is everything in advertising. I'm sure it is, I thought, especially when you're trying to impress a younger man. The anonymous text continued. Sometimes it was just a single word. Loser. Sometimes it was longer messages mocking my appearance or my failed business. Whoever was sending them knew details about my life that suggested they were close to the situation. I started to suspect it might be Nina Walsh, Jenna's best friend and coworker. Nina was the HR director at Hartwell and Associates, and she'd never liked me. She was one of those women who thought her female friends could do better, and she'd made it clear over the years that she considered me beneath Jenna's standards. Nina was also the type who would enjoy psychological warfare. I remembered her from high school, where she'd been the queen bee of a particularly vicious clique of girls who specialized in destroying people's reputations through gossip and manipulation. I decided to do some investigating of my own. Nina lived in an upscale apartment complex on the north side of town. I drove by her building a few times, learning her routine. She left for work every morning at exactly 7:30, driving a red Lexus that was probably worth more than I'd made in the last 2 years. On Thursday afternoon, I followed her from her office to a trendy coffee shop downtown. She met with Jenna, and I watched from across the street as they sat at a window table, their heads close together in intense conversation. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but their body language told me everything I needed to know. This wasn't just girl talk. This was strategy planning. After about an hour, they left the coffee shop together. Nina got in her car and drove away, but Jenna walked in the opposite direction, toward the parking garage where Ethan's BMW was parked. I felt that cold anger building in my chest again. They weren't even trying to be discreet anymore.
I cheated on you with your brother. What's wrong?
I will not forgive you for this!
Watch more on Grammarly.com.
Thought I was too stupid to notice, too pathetic to do anything about it even if I did. That night, I went to O'Malley's, a dive bar on the east side of town, where I sometimes went to drink beer and shoot pool. The owner, Sam Kowalski, was an old friend from high school who'd spent 20 years as a cop before buying the bar with his pension money. Sam was the kind of guy who'd seen everything and wasn't surprised by much. When I told him about my situation, he just nodded and poured me another beer. "They want to see you snap, Marty," he said, wiping down glasses behind the bar. "That's the whole point. They want you to do something stupid so they can paint you as the bad guy when this all comes out." "So what do?" I asked. Sam leaned across the bar and lowered his voice. "You get smart. You document everything. You gather evidence. And when the time comes, you make sure everyone knows the truth." He was right, of course. But part of me didn't want to be smart. Part of me wanted to march into that motel room and confront them both. Part of me wanted to grab Ethan by his perfect hair and show him what a real man looked like when he was properly motivated. But I wasn't going to give them the satisfaction. If they wanted to play games, I could play games too. And I was starting to realize that I might be better at it than they thought. Friday morning brought another anonymous text. "Your wife looked really happy last night." Glowing, you might say. I was getting tired of the games. Whoever was sending these messages was clearly enjoying themselves, but they were also getting sloppy. The message had come through at 7:23 a.m., which meant the sender was probably getting ready for work. That narrowed down the possibilities. I spent the morning doing some research online, using the computer skills I'd developed during my years in the IT business. It didn't take long to find what I was looking for. Nina Walsh had been posting regularly on social media about Jenna's promotion and success. But more interesting were her older posts, going back several years. There were subtle digs at me, comments about how Jenna deserved better, and photos from girls' nights out where the two of them looked like they were plotting something. But the real revelation came when I dug deeper into Nina's employment history. She'd worked at my IT repair shop for exactly 3 months, about 7 years ago. I'd fired her for stealing money from the cash register and lying about it. She'd threatened to sue me, but nothing had come of it. Now she was in a position to get her revenge, and she was using my wife to do it. I was still processing this information when Jenna came home from work, looking flustered and upset. "Bad day?" I asked, trying to sound concerned. "You could say that," she replied, pouring herself a large glass of wine. "Someone vandalized Ethan's car earlier this week, and now there are rumors going around the office about who might have done it." I kept my expression neutral. "That's terrible. Any idea who would do something like that?" She studied my face carefully. "The security cameras at the motel where it happened were too far away to get a clear image, but they could see it was a man in dark clothing driving a pickup truck." "Well, that narrows it down to about half the men in town," I said. "I hope they catch whoever did it." Jenna didn't look convinced, but she didn't press the issue. Instead, she went upstairs to change clothes, and I heard her talking on the phone in hushed tones. That evening, she announced that she was going out with Nina for drinks. "Girl time," she said, applying fresh lipstick in the hallway mirror. "We need to decompress after this crazy week." "Have fun," I told her. "Don't do anything I wouldn't do." She laughed, but it sounded forced. "Don't wait up." After she left, I sat in my living room and tried to figure out my next move. The anonymous texts had stopped, which probably meant that Nina was too busy consoling Jenna about the car incident to focus on tormenting me. But I knew it was only a matter of time before they escalated things further. I was right. Saturday morning, I woke up to find my truck's tires slashed and "loser" spray painted across the windshield in bright red letters. It was clearly visible from the street, which meant all of our neighbors would see it. I stood in my driveway looking at the damage and feeling that familiar cold anger building in my chest. This was no longer about Jenna's affair. This was about a systematic campaign to humiliate and isolate me. As I was taking photos of the damage for insurance purposes, my neighbor Mrs. Peterson came over from across the street. "Oh my goodness, Martin! What happened?" "Vandals," I said, trying to sound more upset than angry. "Probably just kids." But Mrs. Peterson was looking at me with the kind of expression that suggested she thought there might be more to the story. "Have you been having any problems with anyone lately?" The question was loaded. Mrs. Peterson was one of those neighborhood busybodies who knew everyone's business. If rumors were already starting to circulate about my marriage, she would have heard them. "Not that I can think of," I lied. "Just wrong place, wrong time, I guess." She nodded sympathetically, but I could see the wheels turning in her head. By evening, half the neighborhood would know that something was going on with the Graves family. I called my insurance company and arranged for the truck to be towed to a repair shop. Then I called Sam at O'Malley's. "I need to borrow your car," I told him. "Mine's been vandalized." "Jesus, Marty, this is getting serious. Maybe you should call the police." "And tell them what? That my wife is cheating on me and someone doesn't like how I'm handling it? They'll laugh me out of the station." Sam was quiet for a moment. "Come on down to the bar. We need to talk." O'Malley's was nearly empty when I arrived, just a couple of regulars nursing beers and watching a baseball game on the old television above the bar. Sam poured me a whiskey without being asked. "This isn't random," he said, leaning against the bar. "Someone's orchestrating this whole thing. The question is, why?" I told him about Nina and her history with my business. Sam listened without interrupting, occasionally nodding or asking clarifying questions. "So you think she's pulling the strings," he said when I finished, "using your wife's affair as a weapon against you?" "It makes sense," I replied. "She gets her revenge on me, and she gets to play the supportive friend to Jenna. Win-win for her." Sam refilled my glass. "So what are you going to do about it?" That was the million-dollar question. I could confront Nina directly, but that would just give her more ammunition to use against me. I could try to expose the affair, but without solid proof. It would just look like the desperate accusations of a jealous husband. Or I could play their game better than they were playing it. "I'm going to give them what they want," I said finally. Sam raised an eyebrow. "Which is?" "They want me to look like a loser. They want me to be the villain in their story. So I'm going to be the best damn villain they've ever seen." I spent the rest of the weekend planning. By Monday morning, I had a strategy that would have made Nina proud, if she weren't going to be on the receiving end of it. The first step was gathering evidence. I knew Jenna kept important documents in a file cabinet in our home office, including financial records and correspondence. While she was at work, I went through everything systematically. What I found was even better than I'd hoped for. Hidden in a folder marked Personal Development were printed emails between Jenna and Ethan going back 3 months. They were explicit, detailed, and left no doubt about the nature of their relationship. But more importantly, they revealed that Jenna's promotion had been directly tied to her willingness to sleep with Ethan, who apparently had more influence at the company than his job title suggested. There were also financial documents showing that Jenna had been secretly moving money from our joint accounts into a private account that I didn't know existed. She was preparing for a divorce and making sure she'd have resources when it happened. But the most interesting discovery was a handwritten note from Nina, apparently passed to Jenna during a meeting. "E says the promotion is guaranteed if you keep M in the dark for another month. After that, it won't matter what he knows. Stick to the plan." I photographed everything with my phone, then carefully put the documents back exactly where I'd found them. Now I had proof of the affair, the financial deception, and Nina's involvement in the conspiracy. It was time, to start fighting back. My first target was Ethan Beck's reputation. If he wanted to play games with other men's wives, he was going to learn that actions have consequences. I started by creating a fake email account and sending anonymous tips to the HR department at Hartwell and Associates. The messages were carefully worded to sound like they came from a concerned employee who had witnessed inappropriate behavior between Ethan and Jenna. I think you should know that Mr. Beck has been having an inappropriate relationship with Mrs. Graves, and it appears to have influenced her recent promotion, read one message. This kind of favoritism creates a hostile work environment for the rest of us. I sent similar messages to several other employees at the company, using information I'd gathered from their public social media profiles to make the emails seem authentic. Within days, I could tell that word was spreading through the office. Jenna came home Tuesday evening looking stressed and agitated. "Everything okay at work?" I asked innocently. "There are some rumors going around," she said carefully. "People with too much time on their hands and not enough to do." "What kind of rumors?" She hesitated. "Nothing important, just office politics." But I could see the worry in her eyes. The anonymous emails were having their intended effect. My next move was more direct. I drove to Ethan's apartment complex, a trendy development near downtown that catered to young professionals with more money than sense. His BMW was parked in its assigned spot, looking pristine, despite the recent vandalism. I waited until after midnight, then used a small screwdriver to remove the valve stems from all four of his tires. It was quieter than slashing them, and it would take him longer to figure out what had happened. I also used a permanent marker to write "home wrecker" on his driver's side window, but in letters small enough that he might not notice them immediately. As a finishing touch, I left a copy of one of his explicit emails to Jenna under his windshield wiper, with a note attached. "Your neighbors might find this interesting reading." Wednesday morning, Jenna got a phone call that left her pale and shaken. "Ethan's car was vandalized again," she told me after hanging up. "This time they left personal things." Personal things? Private correspondence. Someone's been reading his emails. I made appropriate sympathetic noises, but inside I was celebrating. The psychological pressure was working exactly as I'd hoped. That evening, Jenna announced that she was going to stay late at the office to work on a project. "I might be very late," she said, "or don't wait up." But instead of going to the office or the motel, she went to Nina's apartment. I followed at a safe distance and watched as the two women sat on Nina's balcony, drinking wine and talking intensely. Even from across the parking lot, I could see the stress in their body language. They were starting to crack. Thursday brought a new development. I received a phone call from Detective Ray Morrison of the local police department. "Mr. Graves, I'd like to ask you a few questions about some recent vandalism incidents involving a Mr. Ethan Beck." My heart rate spiked, but I kept my voice calm. "I'm not sure how I can help you, Detective. I don't really know Mr. Beck very well." "He works with your wife, doesn't he?" "Yes, but I've only met him a few times at company functions." "I see. Well, Mr. Beck seems to think there might be a personal motive behind these incidents. He mentioned that you seemed upset at a recent party." I forced myself to laugh. "Upset? Detective, my wife just got a major promotion. I couldn't be happier for her. If Mr. Beck got a different impression, maybe he misunderstood my sense of humor." There was a pause. "Your sense of humor?" "My wife gave me a gag gift at the party, a t-shirt that said, 'The loser of the house.' I played along with the joke, but maybe Mr. Beck thought I was actually upset about it." "I see. And where were you last Tuesday night between midnight and 2 a.m.? I had prepared for this question. "I was at O'Malley's bar until about 1:30. Then I went home. You can check with Sam Kowalski, the owner. He'll remember because I helped him close up." This was true. I had been at O'Malley's that night, but I'd left at 11:30, not 1:30. Sam would cover for me if asked, but hopefully it wouldn't come to that. "All right, Mr. Graves, thank you for your time. We'll be in touch if we need anything else." After hanging up, I immediately called Sam. "The cops might ask you about Tuesday night," I told him. "If they do, remember that I helped you close up around 1:30. "Jesus, Marty, what did you do?" "Nothing that he didn't deserve. But I need you to back me up on this." Sam was quiet for a long moment. "You're playing with fire here." I know, but I'm not going to let them destroy me without fighting back. That evening, Jenna was unusually quiet during dinner. She kept checking her phone and seemed distracted. Something wrong? I asked. The police talked to Ethan today about the vandalism. They think it might be someone with a personal grudge. That's terrible. Any idea who would have a grudge against him? She looked at me carefully. They talked to you too, didn't they? I nodded. Detective Morrison called this afternoon. I told him I barely know Ethan and can't imagine why anyone would target him. Where were you Tuesday night? The question hung in the air between us. This was the moment of truth. If I lied convincingly, I could maintain my cover. If I slipped up, everything would unravel. I was at O'Malley's until late, then came home and went to bed. Why? Just wondering. But her expression suggested she didn't entirely believe me. That night, I lay awake, listening to Jenna toss and turn beside me. I could practically hear the wheels turning in her head as she tried to figure out if her husband was the one tormenting her lover. The irony wasn't lost on me. For months, she'd been lying to me about where she was and what she was doing. Now she was experiencing the same uncertainty and suspicion that I'd been living with. It felt like justice. Friday morning brought another anonymous text, the first one I'd received since the truck vandalism. Getting sloppy, loser. The police are asking questions. But this time, instead of feeling threatened, I felt vindicated. The message confirmed what I'd suspected. Nina was behind the harassment campaign, and she was starting to panic as my counterattack gained momentum. I decided it was time to take the gloves off completely.